The wooden crate was pulled from a captured German truck with red warning marks burned into the lid, and the first American soldier who touched the latch heard something shift inside, like metal sliding over glass. Before he could raise the crowbar, a German prisoner broke from the line, tackled the crate with both arms, and begged the Americans to shoot him first if they planned to open it in the yard. The crate arrived at the American field camp on the back of a captured German truck just before noon, wedged between fuel cans, torn canvas rolls, and two locked medical chests that had already been searched twice on the road. Sergeant Daniel Price ordered the truck unloaded near the inspection tent, and the work moved quickly until one private grabbed the wooden crate by its side handles and felt the weight shift strangely beneath the boards. The crate was not heavy like ammunition, not balanced like food stores, and not marked like official equipment. Yet someone had burned 3 red warning marks into the lid with enough care to make every soldier around it pause. The first argument began when Private Miller reached for a crowbar and joked that German warnings usually meant something worth stealing was inside. Before the tool touched the latch, a German prisoner named Karl Reuter broke from the holding line and slammed both arms around the crate, knocking Miller backward and dragging the box half a foot across the dust. American MPs rushed in, but Reuter did not run, fight, or try to escape. He held the crate like a man holding a wounded child and shouted in broken English that nobody must open it where people could breathe the dust. Price ordered the prisoner pulled away, but Reuter twisted hard enough to keep one hand on the lid until an American corporal pinned him against the truck wheel. The other German prisoners did not laugh or protest. They stepped away from the crate in one silent movement, and that movement made Price lower the crowbar himself. He had seen men fear mines, fuel fires, and booby traps, but this looked different because Reuter was not afraid of dying beside the crate. He was afraid of what would happen if anyone treated it carelessly. The American lieutenant in charge of the camp arrived after hearing the commotion and demanded an explanation. Reuter refused to speak until the crate was moved away from the tents, the wounded men, and the water barrels. The lieutenant thought it was a trick, but Price pointed out the strange marks, the shifting weight, and the way the German prisoners kept backing away from the box. The lieutenant ordered a rope tied around the crate and had it dragged to an empty gravel pit beyond the motor pool, where no one could claim it was being hidden from inspection. When they reached the pit, Reuter finally spoke through an interpreter. He said the crate had been loaded by a German field laboratory attached to a retreating headquarters, and every man who had handled it had been ordered never to open it outside a sealed room. He did not know the full contents, but he had seen one officer open a similar container too quickly and then order every blanket from the room burned. Price watched the interpreter's face tighten as the words came out, because the warning had changed from superstition to procedure. The lieutenant still wanted the crate examined before higher command arrived, but Price refused to let the private use a crowbar. He ordered the area roped off, posted 2 guards at a distance, and sent a driver to fetch an engineer officer from the next depot. That decision angered Miller, who said the war had made everyone afraid of boxes and paperwork. Yet Reuter interrupted him by pointing at a hairline crack near the lower corner where pale powder had gathered in the seam. Price knelt beside the crate without touching it and saw the powder clearly. It was too fine for sawdust and too white for road dust. He stood at once and ordered every man who had handled the box to wash his hands, change gloves, and remain away from the mess line until the engineer arrived. The first conflict had started as curiosity and pride, but by then the crate had become a threat that forced the Americans to choose between speed and caution. Just before sunset, the engineer truck entered the camp, but it was not the engineer who reached the pit first. A German officer from the prisoner line, Captain Vogel, shouted that Reuter was lying to protect stolen documents hidden inside the crate. Several prisoners turned toward Reuter with anger, and Price realized the crate had created 2 dangers at once: whatever was inside the box, and the men willing to open it for reasons nobody had yet explained. Subscribe for more forgotten German POW stories like this one. The engineer officer, Lieutenant Howard, arrived with gloves, canvas masks, and a sealed inspection kit, but he refused to touch the crate until he had questioned every man who had ridden with it. Price brought Reuter forward first, while Vogel stood behind the rope line and called him a coward who had invented the warning to impress the Americans. Reuter kept his eyes on the crate and explained that it had passed through 3 German hands in one morning, yet no one had signed for it openly, which meant someone had wanted the box moved without a record. Howard examined the crate from all sides and found that the latch had been wired from beneath, not to explode, but to pull 2 inner pins if the lid opened too far. That discovery changed the mood around the pit. The private with the crowbar stopped shifting his weight, and even Vogel fell quiet for several seconds. The crate was not only dangerous, it had been designed so that a careless opening would change the condition of whatever sat inside. The escalation began when Howard ordered the German trucks searched again, this time under the floorboards and inside the torn canvas rolls. In a hidden gap near the rear axle, the MPs found a small leather folder containing transport codes, a laboratory stamp, and a list of 4 stops marked only by initials. One stop matched the American field camp's location, written before the truck had been captured. That meant the crate had not arrived by accident. It had been headed somewhere specific. Vogel immediately claimed the list proved his point, saying the crate contained valuable records that Reuter wanted to hide from both sides. Reuter answered that Vogel had ridden near the truck all morning despite claiming he knew nothing about it. Price ordered Vogel separated from the other prisoners, and the moment the MPs moved him, another German prisoner tried to slip a folded note from his sleeve into the dust. A corporal caught the motion and handed the note to Howard. The note contained only 1 line of numbers and a drawing of the red marks on the crate. Howard compared it to the transport folder and realized the numbers were not an inventory code. They were distances between relay points. The crate had been traveling along a route, and the prisoners inside the camp still had pieces of that route in their pockets. The danger was spreading from the gravel pit to the prisoner enclosure. Price ordered a full search of the truck crew, the prisoner line, and the captured supply records. The search uncovered a second clue inside a German medic's bag, glass stoppers wrapped in wax paper, and a label torn from a chemical bottle. Howard would not name the substance, but he ordered the crate moved farther downwind and told the camp cookhouse to cover every open barrel. His caution made Miller finally understand that nobody was guarding a mystery for drama. They were trying not to make a mistake that could travel through the whole camp. The escalation turned physical when Vogel broke from the separated group and ran toward the pit, not away from it. He did not reach the crate because Price tackled him behind the rope line, but the attempt proved that someone wanted the box opened before experts arrived from headquarters. Vogel shouted from the ground that the Americans were wasting time, while Reuter shouted back that Vogel knew exactly why the latch could not be forced. Howard then made the decision that changed the inspection into an operation. He ordered a decoy crate built from empty ration boards and placed beside the gravel pit under a loose tarp, while the real crate was shifted behind a sand wall at dusk. Only Price, Howard, Reuter, and 2 MPs knew about the switch. If someone tried to open the box at night, they would reveal whether the crate was being protected, sabotaged, or hunted. Near midnight, a shadow crossed the motor pool, past the empty trucks, and stopped beside the decoy crate. Price watched from behind the sandbags as Vogel knelt with a stolen tool in his hand, but the man beside him was not German. It was Private Miller, the same soldier who had first reached for the crowbar, and the escalation suddenly turned inward. Price waited until Miller lifted the tarp before he stepped from behind the sand wall and ordered both men to freeze. Vogel tried to run, but the MPs caught him against the truck bumper, while Miller dropped the stolen tool and swore he had only wanted to know what the crate contained. Price did not answer him in the pit. He ordered Miller searched, and inside the private's jacket they found a folded promise written in German and English. offering a share of hidden valuables if he helped open the box before morning. The major consequence struck the camp harder than any warning label had. The crate had begun corrupting judgment before it had even been opened. One American soldier had almost helped a prisoner force the wrong latch because he believed the box contained treasure, while Vogel had fed that belief with enough detail to make the lie feel possible. Howard placed the promise beside the transport folder and saw that the handwriting matched the note found earlier in the prisoner line. Miller was removed under guard, not beaten or insulted, but separated from every duty involving captured property. Price looked furious, yet he kept his voice even because the camp was watching. If the Americans turned on one another in front of the prisoners, Vogel would win something even without touching the crate. Howard used the moment to order a complete halt to all truck unloading and a new inventory of every captured container brought into the camp that week. That inventory produced the next consequence. 2 smaller boxes from the same truck had already been moved to the medical tent because their outer labels claimed they contained clean dressings. Howard opened them carefully in an empty shed and found no bandages inside, only packing straw, sealed glass vials, and record cards written in code. The crate in the pit was no longer an isolated danger. It was part of a hidden shipment disguised inside ordinary medical supplies. Reuter was brought to the shed and asked to identify the markings. He recognized one stamp from a German research detachment that had moved behind retreating units, collecting samples, papers, and containers that regular officers were not allowed to inspect. He said Vogel had served as an escort for that detachment, which explained why Vogel wanted the crate opened quickly and publicly. If the contents were ruined, no one could prove where the shipment had come from. The American lieutenant sent a radio message to headquarters requesting a specialized team, while Howard ordered the real crate wrapped in canvas and placed under a portable awning to keep sun off the seams. Price posted guards in pairs and rotated them every 30 minutes so no one stood long enough for curiosity to become action. The camp that had been noisy all morning became controlled and careful, with every movement around the crate recorded on a board. The consequence deepened when a medic reported that 2 soldiers who had handled the medical boxes had developed irritated eyes and coughing after opening loose packing straw. Howard immediately moved them to a separate tent, washed their clothing, and sealed the shed. He did not claim the crate contained poison, disease, or explosives because he did not know yet, but he treated ignorance as a danger instead of a gap to be filled with guesses. By dawn, the specialized team arrived with sealed cases, heavy gloves, and a senior officer named Major Ellison. He questioned Howard, Price, Reuter, and even Miller separately, then walked to the pit and studied the red marks without touching the wood. His first order was simple and absolute. No one was to open the German crate in the field, not under pressure, not for evidence, and not even to satisfy command curiosity, because the crate had been built to make the first careless witness destroy the truth. The major reversal began when Major Ellison revealed that the red warning marks did not mean the crate was too dangerous to move. They meant it had already been opened once and resealed by someone who did not understand the original system. Howard checked the latch again and saw the proof in the screw heads. The inner pins had been reset from the outside, and the pale powder in the seam was not leaking from the contents. It had been placed there deliberately to frighten handlers into keeping distance. Vogel heard the discovery from the rope line and smiled for the first time since midnight. Reuter's face changed instead. He realized the crate had been turned into a performance, made to look more dangerous than it was so the Americans would isolate it, guard it, and focus attention on the wrong object. Ellison immediately ordered every item from the truck brought back under guard, including the canvas rolls, fuel cans, and medical chests that had already been cleared. The reversal exposed the real trick. Inside one fuel can, cleaned so well it no longer smelled of fuel, the team found a sealed metal cylinder wrapped in cloth. It carried no red marks, no warning labels, and no dramatic latch. Vogel had tried to force the Americans to obsess over the crate while the actual object moved unnoticed through normal storage. Price looked at the cylinder and understood why Vogel had risked everything at the pit. He had been protecting a decoy by pretending to attack it. Ellison ordered Vogel placed where he could see the cylinder but not speak to the other prisoners. Then he asked Reuter why he had truly tackled the crate in the yard. Reuter admitted that he had believed the crate itself was dangerous because that was what he had been told by officers during the retreat. He had not lied. He had been used. The men moving the shipment had trained their own handlers to fear the wrong container. The reversal changed Reuter's position from suspect to key witness. He described the last transfer point, a rail siding near a burned village, where a second truck had separated from the convoy during an air raid. Ellison compared that detail with the route folder and found a missing stop between two initials. If the cylinder belonged to one shipment, the second truck might carry more containers still moving toward Allied lines. Price was ordered to take a fast patrol toward the rail siding with Reuter under guard as guide. This time the mission was not to open the crate, protect the crate, or search the crate. It was to find the part of the shipment no one had noticed. The story had reversed from a locked box mystery into a moving trail, and the danger had escaped the gravel pit before the Americans understood its shape. At the rail siding, they found fresh tire tracks leading into an abandoned warehouse and a stack of empty German medical crates near the loading dock. Inside the warehouse, a civilian cart was being loaded by two men in work coats who froze when the Americans entered. They claimed to be salvaging supplies, but Reuter identified one of them as a laboratory escort from the retreating detachment. The patrol seized the cart and found 3 more plain cylinders hidden inside sacks of oats. Ellison's warning became clear at once. The dramatic German crate had never been the prize. It was a stage prop meant to delay, distract, and contaminate the Americans' decisions while the real containers slipped into civilian transport. By evening, the seized cylinders, the crate, Vogel, Reuter, and the captured escorts were all brought back to camp for the final record. The final irreversible event began when Ellison ordered the original crate placed in the center of the yard beside the plain cylinders, the fake warning powder, the reset latch, the route folder, and the medical boxes. Every object was displayed unopened because the proof no longer depended on exposing the contents in front of curious men. The system around the shipment told the story. Fear marks on one box, hidden cylinders in another, false medical labels, and human couriers trained to protect the wrong secret. Vogel was brought forward first and asked to identify the route. He refused, but the captured escort from the rail siding answered before the interpreter finished repeating the question. The escort said the shipment had been split into decoy and real sections after retreating officers learned American soldiers often searched dramatic containers first. The crate was designed to stop a camp, while the plain cylinders were designed to disappear through routine. That statement changed the final danger. A routine quartermaster wagon had already left the camp before dawn carrying cleared equipment from the captured truck, and the inventory board showed 1 canvas roll still unaccounted for. Price ordered 2 jeeps after the wagon while Ellison locked down the yard. The last container might already be moving away because everyone had spent the night guarding the crate. The jeeps caught the wagon near a bridge where the driver had stopped to repair a loose wheel. Price searched the canvas rolls one by one and found a 4th plain cylinder sewn inside the innermost layer. The driver had no idea it was there. He had signed for canvas, not sealed material, and the cylinder would have reached a storage depot by afternoon if the escort had not confessed. The final piece had nearly escaped through paperwork. When Price returned with the 4th cylinder, Ellison ordered all 4 placed inside a padded transport case and sealed with American tags. The original crate remained closed beside them. Miller, who had been kept under guard since the night incident, watched as Price wrote his statement into the record. The private had nearly opened the wrong box for greed, but his failure had revealed how easily curiosity could be used against trained soldiers. Ellison then issued the order that gave the story its name. No U.S. soldier was to open the German crate, not because it contained the most dangerous object, but because it had been built to control whoever looked at it. It turned curiosity into risk, caution into delay, and fear into camouflage for something else. The crate would be transported sealed, studied in a controlled facility, and treated as evidence of deception rather than treasure. Vogel made one last attempt to damage the record by claiming the Americans would invent whatever they wanted once the objects left camp. Ellison answered by having photographs taken of every item in place, every seal applied, and every witness standing beside the display. Reuters signed first, then Price, Howard, the captured escort, and even Miller after admitting how Vogel had misled him. The irreversible moment came when the sealed transport truck rolled out with the crate and all 4 cylinders under armed escort, while the empty gravel pit remained behind like a trap that had failed. The crate had never been opened in the yard. The real containers had been recovered, the decoy system had been exposed, and every soldier who had wanted to pry up the lid now understood why the safest order in the camp had been the one that sounded most impossible. By sunset, the rope line around the gravel pit was removed, but the marks left by the crate stayed pressed into the dust. Price watched the transport truck vanish down the road, and then took the crowbar from Miller's kit, tagged it, and placed it with the witness statements. The crate remained sealed, which frustrated half the camp, yet that was exactly why the order had worked. The mystery was not solved by opening the box. It was solved by refusing to let the box decide what men would do. Most people know how World War II ended. Very few know what happened inside these prison camps. Subscribe for more untold WWII stories.